Yo everyone, sorry for the late video this week, been very busy with work unfortunately, but we've got quite the card to look forward to this weekend. 3:15, Muhammad versus Della Maddalena's card takes place this weekend, and although the card is a little lackluster on paper, it's actually quite a little bit of a sleeper card if you know what I'm saying, because there is a lot of pretty solid matchups that I'm excited to see go down this weekend, and even though there isn't necessarily that much name value on here, I really do want to see those matchups go down. So before we get into my predictions and breakdown for this card though, let's go back a little bit and talk a little bit about the last card, which was UFC Fight Night Sandhagen vs Figueiredo. The subscribers and me got the main event pick correct, picking Sandhagen, but I didn't think he would do it so dominantly, regardless if it ended up being a little anticlimactic due to the injury. Overall results on the card were decent though. We broke even on bets again, which makes 2 weeks in a row where we broke even on bets, which isn't terrible, but you guys know that you do want to win when you place bets. And for picks, we did go 8-4, which isn't too bad at all. I'll be posting the full card betting guide for this event later on this week, so stay tuned for that. And if you want a chance of being the subscribers bet of the week and have your chance of being added to the bets, put your best bets below and I'll be picking one to add to the roster for that card on the later video. The subscribers bet of the week for the last card did very well. It did cash and we did end up picking this specific bet here. So thanks to that sub, of course, for the input. If you do end up liking the video as well, please leave a like, subscribe, and let me know in the comments below to show your support. As always, I'll be starting with the prelims and working my way all the way to the main event. Timestamps are in the description and the comment section below if you'd like to skip to any fight in particular. We're going to be starting with the first fight of the card, which is Brad Katona versus Bekzat Almakhan. And honestly, we're starting off with an absolute banger of a fight and a matchup. I expect this to end in a KO finish a lot of the time, or if it doesn't end in a finish, it'll be like an outright war in my opinion. Probably very similar to Brad's fight with Cody Gibson, or very similar to Brad's fight with Gene Matsumoto. Brad just loves to bring the action, and having Bekzat Almakhan as your dance partner, who has 11 wins and 9 by KO, you guys better expect fireworks here. My initial gut instinct when I first saw this fight announced was to pick Bekzat Almakhan, and that's not only because of his performance against Umar Nurmagomedov. I know that was a loss though, guys, where he pretty much got dominated with the grappling of Umar, but Umar did not want to deal with the striking of Bekzat because he got put down bad in the first round of that fight. But my main reasoning for wanting to pick Bekzat over Brad Katona here, it is just mainly because of the power difference and the finishing potential of the two. Although Brad is pretty solid on the feet and can land some nasty counter punches against some pretty solid strikers as well, the dude just doesn't seem to be putting these guys out or even knocking them down how you would hope after they take a massive shot from him. And that's reflected in the fact that he has only 1 KO on his record with 10 decision wins. I think both guys will have opportunities in the grappling as well in this fight. I don't think it'll be strictly striking as a matchup. I could see either guy trying to mix in a takedown or two in this fight. I think if anyone shoots though at the start, it'll probably be Bekzat Almakhan if he feels like he's starting to get a bit pressured by Brad Katona's volume in this fight. Honestly, I could even see this fight going similarly to Brad Katona versus Gene Matsumoto, where both guys have some success on the feet, but Bekzat Almakhan, being very similar to Gene Matsumoto, will probably land the more damaging and impactful strikes in the fight to get the win by decision. That's my official prediction for this fight. Bekzat Almakhan by decision or even by potential KO, since Brad Katona does take quite a bit of damage in his fights. And I also do think that Bekzat Almakhan's power needs to be rated more highly by people, and I do think he will have way more finishing potential on the feet than Brad Katona in this matchup. So that's the pick. Moving on to Daniel Santos versus Jeong Lee. And now this is a little bit of a tough one, since I have been seeing a lot of people recently picking Jeong Lee as an underdog, but now at the time of this recording, it's actually switched and Daniel Santos is now the underdog in this matchup, and I do not agree with that. I really do think that Daniel Santos should have stuck as the favorite. I know he pulled out of his last fight due to undisclosed medical issues. I know he's been out for almost 2 years now, which always sucks. That's usually a main reason I pick against some fighters, honestly, but I just don't rate Jeong Lee's game and fight IQ as highly as others, and I do think he hasn't really had many impressive wins up until this point. And this is because I used to be a little bit high on Blake Builder, and Jeong Lee did beat Blake Builder, but now I really do need to see more from him since I don't think that win has aged too well for Lee. I think Daniel Santos' win against Muniz Jr. was pretty impressive, and I think being able to finish John Castaneda as well after being rocked and showing massive heart and a crazy ability to recover and keep pressure on, I think that sort of thing will be a great tool for him in this fight. I can see his pressure and his pace being something that'll be tough for Jeong Lee to handle, and I could see him finding a finish as well in this fight as long as he isn't controlled by the wrestling too much. But even then, Santos' scrambling ability and his BJJ are pretty solid, and I think he has a lot going for him in this fight. The only major issues he might have in this fight, of course, including that wrestling, will be Jeong Lee's size and physicality in this fight. But apart from that, if he's able to keep solid pressure on his opponent and he's defensively responsible in this fight as he's closing the distance, I could see him coming away from this one with a win by decision or by KO. That's my pick, Daniel Santos as an underdog. Moving on to Marc-Andre Barriault versus Bruno Silva, and I honestly think this is going to be another absolute scrap of a fight, similar to the prelim opener, in my opinion, and I actually do think I will take the underdog in Bruno Silva to get this one done here, and it's just because I think although I do like Marc-Andre Barriault's style a little bit more than Bruno Silva's in terms of his overall pressure style game, relying on his cardio and his willingness to just push forward, I just think it's become pretty obvious now after his last few losses that he isn't as defensively responsible as you would like, and he can be put away by dudes that hit hard in the division. Justin Stoltzfus, if I remember correctly, had literally like 0 KOs in the UFC, and Marc-Andre Barriault was his first, and that's because he went headfirst into a guy that was just swinging hooks like a maniac. I also think that people forget that Bruno Silva hits incredibly hard. I think they forget how many KOs he has in the UFC, and in general, the dude has 23 wins with 20 KOs. And they forget how well he's done against some opponents he's versed, including Alex Pereira. I also think that he's incredibly durable, and I've only seen him really rocked by the great GM3, so I really feel as though in a firefight, which I think will happen in this fight given a matter of time, if one of them goes down, it'll be Marc-Andre Barriault. So I'll be picking Bruno Silva by KO in this match. I really do think they'll get into a firefight, and I think one of the guys will go down, and that guy will be Marc-Andre Barriault. If you're picking Marc-Andre Barriault, I do think his bet line of winning is the pressure and winning a decision victory, if you want my opinion, but I do not think he gets the finish. Regardless, my pick is Silva as the underdog. Moving on to Navajo Stirling versus Ivan Erslan. And now I do want to say that I really do think that Navajo Stirling, even though he's only 7-0 in the UFC currently, he does have the skills to pay the bills, at least for his current level of competition, and I really do think that he might even be able to beat opponents inside the rankings like a Johnny Walker or an Alonzo Menefield. That's how good the guy really is. I do really think that this potentially is a better matchup for him as well than his previous opponent in Tuco Tokos. I think Tuco Tokos at least had a pretty good game plan going into that fight with Navajo Stirling, but he couldn't get crazy amounts of success with it, and even ended up gassing out more so towards the third round of that fight, and that's why he ended up really losing. When talking about this fight though, I can see it being mostly a stand-up fight, him doing well in the first round, maybe they have a few solid exchanges in there, and then by the second round, he probably will have already caught and KO'd Ivan Erslan by then, in my opinion. I think that I've seen too many people give consistent trouble to Ivan Erslan on the feet for me to favor him in this matchup in the slightest. I've seen at least 5 or 6 of his most recent fights, and to his credit, sometimes he does have some pretty decent counter shots against his opponents, but I do think that has mostly come against similar sized opponents or smaller, and Navajo Stirling will be the way bigger and longer fighter in this matchup. I have also seen Ivan Erslan be caught from the left side so many times in his fights, and Navajo Stirling has a really nasty left hook counter, man. This is going to be in my confident picks list as well, honestly. Besides maybe a fight that's on the main card that I'll talk about soon, this might be one of my most confident picks I have on the card. I really think he does get it done. Moving on to Modestas Bukauskas versus Yeong Cutelaba. These guys right now are currently dead even, I think, on the odds, and I think I'm going to go with my initial thought and my initial pick for this fight, and that is Yeong Cutelaba to get this one done. And I think he's more well-rounded. I think his wrestling will end up being a big factor in getting the win here in this fight. Although I think his striking is also pretty solid, I would give the edge to Modestas Bukauskas in that department. So I believe that mixing in the takedowns for Yeong Cutelaba, doing solid work on the ground, making sure your striking is crisp will be good to see from Yeong Cutelaba and should get him the win here. I picked Cutelaba as an underdog against Ibo Erslan, and I had people calling me crazy because of that, and I said a similar thing about his well-roundedness and his grappling abilities in that matchup, so I'm repeating them here, guys. So just watch out for him. Here's my pick for this fight. I think he gets it done here. Moving on to Jessica Andrade versus Jasmine Jasudavicius. And just hear me out here, guys. I think the potentially safe bet is to go Jasmine Jasudavicius here, but I have been watching quite a bit of fight tape on both girls, and I'm just starting to get convinced that Jessica Andrade is going to outdamage and put this girl on the back foot with her forward pressure. Am I just crazy for saying that and thinking that? I watched back a few of their fights, including Jessica Andrade's loss to Natalia Silva, who is also fighting on this card, by the way, and I actually really did like the work that she was doing and how she was tracking Natalia Silva down in that fight. And unfortunate for her that Silva fights really well on the back foot. She's really good. She hits relatively hard. She's constantly on the move. It was a tough matchup for her in that fight. But Jasmine Jasudavicius isn't as fast, isn't as explosive. Her striking isn't anywhere near as good or damaging as Natalia Silva's, in my opinion. And the only thing that's swaying me a little bit more towards Jasmine Jasudavicius is because that this fight isn't in the Apex, and the Natalia Silva versus Jessica Andrade fight was in the Apex, so it would be easier to track her down there. And corner her opponent to do solid work. But I still think I could see this being a relatively close fight. I don't think either lady gets a finish here. I think I could see Jessica Andrade winning a decision here on damage, closing the distance well, doing what she did against Natalia Silva, but having a bit more success. I'm going to say, like I said, it's a close fight. I think she edges a split decision. I'm going to make that specific call here. That's my pick for this fight. I honestly think that's going to be pretty against the grain here. I don't imagine how many people are going to be picking Jessica Andrade as an underdog in this fight, but I am going to pick her here. I just find it hard to see Jasmine Jasudavicius being able to mix in her grappling here with her striking in this fight, since Jessica Andrade has some pretty solid scrambles and takedown defense. That's just my opinion, guys. Let's move on to Mike Malott versus Charles Radtke. And man, the amount of underdogs I have already taken on this card, and you guys haven't even seen the main card predictions yet, so get ready for that. I was debating on taking Charles Radtke here because of a few reasons here, and those reasons were that I think he could do the better work in the striking, of course. The guy has pretty decent takedown defense. He's an absolute gamer who's willing to scrap and has decent cardio to go the distance too. So I think he's a pretty solid underdog candidate, but I watched quite a bit of fight tape on Charles Radtke, and I watched a fight he had a few years ago with Jonathan Piersma, and that just made me lose confidence in picking him to get it done against Mike Malott. He just got taken down and out-scrambled a few times in that fight in positions that he honestly shouldn't have lost and shouldn't have gotten taken down from if he was solid enough on the ground, in my opinion. And someone like Mike Malott is good enough to not only get you down, but to do solid work at advancing positions and putting you in danger of getting submitted pretty quickly. I do think Radtke is a pretty good underdog though, like I mentioned, but I do think Malott gets this fight done by using his superior grappling to dominate the ground exchanges in this one. So probably a decision win here for Mike Malott. He also has pretty decent kicks from range in the stand-up, so I do think he should be able to do decent enough on the feet before setting up the takedowns in this one. So let's move on to the main card opener now. Benoit Saint-Denis versus Prepolec. And before I do get into the predictions for the main card here, guys, I just wanted to say, if you do like the content you're watching, make sure to support the channel by liking the video and subscribing if you are a new viewer. That's all. I can get into the prediction now for this fight, and man, I'm super disappointed we did not get the Yoel Alvarez versus Benoit Saint-Denis matchup. And for your information, guys, I was going to pick Yoel Alvarez to put a massive beatdown on Benoit Saint-Denis going into this fight. I just thought the dude would be way too much for him, with Benoit already coming off of back-to-back losses he has, versus probably the most dangerous upcoming prospect in the division. I don't think it would have been a good matchup for him. But anyway, that matchup is gone now, done and dusted. We've got the new matchup. We've got Prepolec on short notice to fight BSD, and Benoit is a minus 1,050 favorite going into this fight, and I do think Benoit is going to win the fight, and he's going to win it rather easily, I think. I think he pressures Prepolec on the feet and finishes him in this fight, whether it be submission or TKO. I don't think it's that Prepolec isn't willing to fight or he's like an absolute can. It's just the level of competition he's versing or has been versing, coupled with the fact that he did come to the UFC before. He lost both the fights he had in the UFC. He lost to Nordine Taleb and Austin Hubbard, I believe, and he is taking this one on pretty short notice, and I think that's mainly because he is a Canadian fighter that they could find to step in on this short notice. I think he looks stiff in the stand-up as well, the majority of the time, and coming to verse Benoit after a year off on short notice, I feel like it's just a recipe for disaster. Benoit is still really good. That's the pick, guys. I'll be putting it in my confident picks list. Moving on to Alexa Grasso versus Natalia Silva. And you know what, guys? I'm pretty close to putting this in my confident picks list because I really do think Natalia Silva gets this one done a large majority of the time. But it's just the BJJ factor of Alexa Grasso. It always puts me off sometimes. I remember picking Valentina in their first fight together and seeing that fast back take into the submission was pretty slick. So I don't know if I'll leave this out of my confident picks list, but Natalia Silva is pretty solid in the striking, man. She's got solid takedown defense too. She's been consistently beating a lot of girls in the striking, and I think she's been winning these matchups very clearly. She's the better, more well-rounded striker in this matchup. It will not be close on the feet. I truly believe that, and the only equalizer will be the BJJ of Alexa Grasso. I'm going to say a 30-27 Natalia Silva win here, guys. That's my official prediction for this fight. I think she keeps this one standing and puts on her best performance to date against another former UFC champion. And you know what? I'll put her in my confident picks list, guys. I really do see it happening. I'll chuck her in there. Moving on to the feature fight of the card, though. Jose Aldo versus Aiemann Zahabi. And listen, I've said this before, and I'll say it again. Although Aldo is getting old, he hasn't shown signs of aging or slowing down just yet in his career. And I hope it doesn't happen in this fight right now, but like I've also said a bunch of times, you have to be somewhat special and above the pack in some way to beat a Jose Aldo. I don't really think Mario Batista beat Jose Aldo. I don't even think Marlon Moraes beat Jose Aldo. And everyone else that has beat Aldo has been a former champion, which is insane. They've been pretty much the goats of their division, like Petr Yan, like Volkanovski, like Max Holloway. The guy is adding to his legacy by beating solid ranked opponents in a new lower weight division, which is arguably the toughest division skill for skill in the entire UFC right now. And I know Zahabi is good. He's a solid striker. He has solid wins. He's got solid pressure. And most importantly, he actually has a really solid guard and doesn't seem to show damage very easily. His output is also pretty solid as well, man. But like I said, I just don't think it's good enough to beat an Aldo. Aldo's explosiveness, his combination, his overall speed when it comes to his striking, it's just still so good and so high level. I do think the fight's going to be close though. I think Aiemann Zahabi will have a good amount of output and will cause a bit of trouble for Aldo, but I can still see Aldo winning this fight, and I do think Aiemann Zahabi actually does beat quite a few ranked guys in the division, even right now, but Aldo is the exception to the rule. That's my belief. I'm going to leave that statement right there. That's my pick for this fight, guys. And now we can jump into the co-main event of the evening. Valentina Shevchenko versus Manon Fiorot. And man, Manon Fiorot is the favorite against Shevchenko, who is a 9-time UFC title winner, which is just crazy to me. I know she's on quite the win streak right now, but I still think it's out of pocket, I believe. And I'm going to say something that might also be a little bit out of pocket and definitely won't be something that's a popular opinion here for sure. And that is, although I do think Manon Fiorot is good, she's obviously top level to be on the win streak she's on and to beat the opponents she's beaten already, but I honestly think she's relatively one-dimensional, and what I mean by that is, if you watch her fight, she pretty much 95% of the time throws her lead side, she favors that jab, double jab, jab check hook combo, and she will chuck in some rear kicks and oblique kicks to round off her game, and she rarely throws the rear hand, in my opinion, unless it's in a combination like a 1-2-3 combo. And other than that, That's pretty much her entire game. I don't really see anything else. That's all I really see from her. And I just believe Shevchenko will be able to deal with that at her pedigree of striking, at her level of MMA that she fights at. As someone who's won so many kickboxing matches, so many Muay Thai matches, I just believe she should be able to get it done once again. I think there will be moments as well in this fight for her to be mixing in the grappling. Even though Manon Fiorot has solid takedown defense, I think she can pick her moments well enough to get her down at least a couple times in this fight. I think she'll probably win a clear decision win. I'm going to say 48-47 with a few closer rounds. That's going to be my official pick for that fight, and that's another underdog I'm picking for this card, man. And now we're moving on to the main event of the evening, Belal Muhammad versus Jack Della Maddalena. Now, I've been thinking about this matchup for so long, ever since it was initially announced, and I'll be 100% honest with you guys. My initial gut instinct was probably the same as a lot of people, and I probably had the same justification as a lot of people too, and that was, oh well, if Gilbert Burns had a lot of success taking down Jack Della in their fight, and he was arguably winning that fight until the finish, Belal Muhammad will most likely take him down and control him on the ground for 5 rounds to win a decision. And I don't think that line of thinking is necessarily wrong, since that outcome could definitely happen, but the more I think about the matchup, the more I end up wanting to lean towards the side of Jack Della Maddalena getting it done, and I'll explain the reasons why and the things that did convince me. Starting off with, although Gilbert took down Jack and was doing well in their fight, he arguably didn't do much with the takedown, since Jack's scrambling ability was so good to get out of so many tough positions, including the position he was in before the finishing sequence. And I know that Gilbert did have him in a body triangle at one point, but that was for like 15 seconds at the end of the second round. For pretty much the whole fight, he could not keep down Jack in a single position, and he had to keep scrambling with him to maintain some sort of control. I think this is a pretty important point too, because although I believe that Belal Muhammad has better wrestling and better top control than Gilbert Burns, I don't think he has anywhere near the BJJ, of course, and anywhere near the scrambling ability to stop Jack Della Maddalena from getting out from underneath. I do think that Belal's main ways of winning this fight are by ground and pound TKO in the later rounds due to grappling control, and obviously, guys, the main way for him to win this fight would be by decision. I don't think he can submit Jack Della Maddalena. I don't think there's much evidence of that in his career. The second point that has been convincing me as well is that when I think about what happens the majority of this fight, I think that Belal, if he fights his smartest fight, it will include minimal striking, wrestling him, taking him down, and doing as much damage on the ground as you can over 5 rounds to win a decision. And if that is the case, you are giving Jack Della Maddalena a minimum of 5 separate times where he can reset, go back on the feet, and fight you on the feet. Since rounds start on the feet, where you are now in danger with the striking, I do think even in those 5 opportunities, Jack will do significant damage to Belal in this fight, and that is in the worst case scenario if Belal takes him down permanently and he can't get back up until the end of the round. I believe we will see a more active Jack Della Maddalena if he does get taken down, someone who will be way more urgent, more dangerous than a Leon Edwards will ever be, and I think we are going to see Belal Muhammad start to struggle with Jack Della Maddalena here to the point where it will affect his forward pressure. If Belal decides to fight his dumbest fight, which he actually says he wants to fight, by the way, which is he wants to box Jack Della Maddalena and show him his Canelo hands, I guarantee you Belal gets put away within 2 to 3 rounds. But that is something that's just not going to happen. Belal isn't that dumb that he wouldn't wrestle Jack Della Maddalena in this matchup, and he's very likely just shit-talking the entire time just to build up something for a bit of fun. Those 2 points were probably the most significant points that led me towards JDM to get this one done. And another thing that I really do believe is that Belal had a great performance against Leon Edwards. I'm not going to take that away from him at all, but he did win 3 rounds, in my opinion, and he did lose 2 of those rounds, where he almost got finished in one of the rounds, which was the last round, where Leon Edwards was able to reverse position, get on top, and started landing some ground and pound. And if JDM reverses position on the ground and ever ends up on top in this fight, the amount of damage he will do from top position is going to be absolutely brutal. I really do think he has a high likelihood of doing that. I reckon he will be able to reverse position against Belal at least a couple of times in this fight, since I believe his scrambles are really good, and he did all that and more with a broken arm in the first round against Gilbert Burns, who's a way better BJJ practitioner. Jack Della Maddalena will get this one done, and I will be putting a decent bet on him to do so since the odds are slowly creeping closer and closer inwards, and I just can't help myself. I don't want them to get closer to even. Before I wrap up this video, I did want to say the funniest thing about this matchup to me is that Islam is waiting for the winner of this fight, since if JDM wins, he will vacate the title and move up to welterweight to challenge him for the belt. So if you wanted Ilia Topuria versus Islam Makhachev to happen, you sort of need JDM to lose this fight, which I just thought was funny, guys. I still am gonna pick JDM to get this one done. That's my official pick for the main event, guys. And that's it for my full card predictions and breakdown for UFC 315, Muhammad versus Della Maddalena. If you guys have any thoughts or questions for me regarding the card, feel free to leave a comment below, and I'll do my best to respond to every single comment left in the comment section. Thanks for watching, and see you guys next time.